All right, today we're going to jump into a really fantastic book, Robert Terry's A History of Mexico. Now, hold on, this is not going to be your typical dry history lesson. Nope. What we're doing here is exploring how a great historian unpacks a nation that is, at its very core, a fascinating paradox.
Right from the get-go, Robert Terry just lays it all out on the table. He presents this central puzzle. And his whole argument, really, is that this very contradiction, this constant push and pull between incredible beauty and shocking violence, between creation and destruction, that is the absolute key to understanding Mexico's entire story. It's the thread he follows all the way through the book.
And this contradiction, it runs deep. I mean, think about it. Terry points out how Mexico has sent its culture all over the world. Tacos, tequila, the Day of the Dead imagery. It's a global cultural powerhouse. And yet, even with all that, it's a place that's still so profoundly misunderstood. So the book really sets out to peel back all those layers of caricature.
So that's the million-dollar question, right? When a country's history is this huge, this full of paradoxes, where do you even start? Well, that's what's so great about this book. It gives us a really powerful tool, a framework to help make sense of it all. And this brings us to the real heart of the author's argument. To understand Mexican history, he introduces this powerful central metaphor, the palimpsest.
Now, what is a palimpsest? It's basically an old manuscript that's been written on, partially erased, and then written on again. But here's the kicker. The old writing is never completely gone. Terry argues that Mexican history is just like that. It's not a straight line where one era just replaces the last one. Instead, it's all these layers built right on top of each other, and the past is always visible just beneath the surface.
And the book gives us these brilliant, very real examples. You can literally see it for yourself. Go to Mexico City, and you'll find these huge Spanish cathedrals built from the very stones of dismantled Aztec temples. You see it in politics, where the PRI party, which ruled for 70 years, built its entire structure on the bones of the revolution. The past isn't even past. It's right there.
Okay, so using this idea of a layered past, the book starts to analyze the biggest moments of rupture in Mexican history. And it all starts with the most massive collision of all, the arrival of the Spanish.
This is such a critical point in the book, and it really changes how you see the conquest. The author makes a compelling case that this wasn't really a military victory in the traditional sense. It was first and foremost a biological catastrophe. You know, that small band of conquistadors? They were just the carriers of a much deadlier weapon.
The scale of this collision is it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. 90%, the book calls it a demographic apocalypse. Diseases from Europe, like smallpox, just ripped through the indigenous population because they had zero immunity. These diseases did what armies never could have. They completely shattered societies, creating this massive power vacuum that ultimately made the conquest possible.
And that pattern of violent collision just keeps going right into the 19th century. The book describes this period as a kind of chaotic adolescence for the country. Mexico is newly independent, but it's really struggling to figure out what it is. And all that chaos leads to invasions, to civil wars, and of course, to the incredible trauma of losing half its territory to the United States. That's a scar, the author argues, that still shapes the national psyche today.
So this is where the book's whole argument really comes together beautifully. It shows that these deep historical patterns, these layered realities, and these violent collisions, they aren't just stories from long ago. They are the very things that explain the contradictions we see in modern Mexico right now.
Terry uses this one single day to perfectly illustrate the modern paradox. January 1st, 1994, the day NAFTA goes into effect. For the government, and for many others, this was it. This was the moment Mexico was finally shedding its past, joining the First World, and becoming part of this new globalized future. It was a day of just huge optimism.
But, and this is incredible, on that exact same day, an indigenous army rose up in the South, the Zapatistas. They basically declared war on the state, saying that their Mexico, the deep, unresolved, layered past, was being completely left behind. The author points to this single day as the perfect living example of the palimpsest. You've got modern, global Mexico colliding head-on with its own deep history.
So, what's the big takeaway from A History of Mexico? Well, the book doesn't really give you any easy answers. What it does, though, is leave you with this incredibly profound understanding of the forces that are still shaping the nation, day in and day out.
And here's the author's final thesis, right here. The story of Mexico is really a story of incredible endurance. It's this constant negotiation between breaking with the past and being bound by it, a perpetual state of becoming something new. The past isn't a closed book. It's an active character in the story of the present.
And this is the powerful, provocative question the book leaves us with. By framing Mexico's story as the result of choices and events, not some kind of fixed destiny, it suggests that the future isn't set in stone. The story can be rewritten. And that's a really powerful thought to end on, not just for understanding Mexico, but for how we think about history itself. A truly fantastic read. Thank you for joining me.